4:47 a.m. Central Time, Friday, June 13th, 2026. 3 commercial addresses across the Dallas-Fort Worth metroplex. Simultaneous breach. Frisco, Garland, Mesquite. At each location, the same sequence. A black Suburban rolls to a stop in a strip mall parking lot. The doors open without lights. 8 tactical operators stack against a glass storefront. A handheld ram strikes the secondary door at the rear loading bay. A canine handler waits 10 feet behind the breach point with a Belgian Malinois at heel. The radio call is the same at all 3 sites, within 4 seconds of each other. Breach, breach, breach. The signs on the storefronts read PuzzleVault Adventures. Family-friendly escape rooms. Birthday parties welcome. School groups by reservation. Inside 3 of those rooms, behind walls that were not on any. This is the case of Homeland Security Investigations versus Marcus Dellard and 10 co-defendants. Indictment number filed in the Eastern District of Texas. The case is still open. 2 coordinators remain at large. The narrative you are about to hear is reconstructed from the 47-page warrant affidavit, the criminal complaint, the public detention hearing transcript, and 3 press conferences given by the Dallas HSI special agent in charge. Marcus Dellard, 42 years old at the time of arrest. No prior criminal record. No federal flags. Clean tax filings going back 9 years. Before 2025, he worked as a hospitality consultant. Boutique hotels in Austin. A failed co-working concept in Houston. A short engagement with a regional restaurant group in Oklahoma City. Nothing notable. Nothing flagged. In October of 2025, Dellard registered a Texas limited liability company under the name PuzzleVault Holdings. The registered agent was a paralegal service in Plano. The principal address was a mailbox at a UPS store. The initial capital filing listed $80,000 in member contributions. The source of those funds, according to the affidavit, has still not been fully accounted for. The business model was straightforward. Escape rooms. Themed environments built inside leased commercial spaces. Customers pay a per-person fee. They are locked inside a themed room. They solve puzzles. They get out within 60 minutes or they do not. The fee was $39 per ticket. The average room held 6 players. Online reviews averaged 4.8 stars across all locations. School district sponsorships were in place with 2 suburban districts by January. Birthday parties booked solid through spring break. 9 locations opened between November 2025 and February 2026. 9 commercial build-outs in 4 months. Each one with custom partition walls, themed lighting rigs, prop fabrication, sound systems, and electronic locking mechanisms. The industry standard for an escape room build-out is between 4 and 7 months per location. PuzzleVault completed 9 in roughly 120 days. The investigators would later note that this timeline was only possible if construction had begun before the leases were signed. Some of the partition framing, according to a forensic contractor hired by HSI, predated the lease execution dates by as much as 11 weeks. The concealed spaces were built first. The escape rooms were built around them. The forensic contractor's report included tool mark analysis on 3 of the interior partition frames. Anchor bolts for the concealed room framing had been set in the concrete subfloor before the tenant improvement permits were filed. In 2 locations, the certificate of occupancy had been issued before the outer walls of the visible escape rooms were structurally complete. The rooms that paying customers entered were, in every meaningful sense, built second. Of the 9 PuzzleVault locations, 6 were operational. 3 carried permanent signage on specific rooms inside them. The signs were laminated. They were screwed into the doors, not taped. They read, in black sans serif on yellow background, room temporarily out of order. Please ask staff for alternative booking. At the Frisco location, the out-of-order room was the Egyptian tomb. At Garland, the submarine. At Mesquite, the vault. Customers were told the rooms were being refreshed. Reviews mentioned the closures in passing. Several customers wrote that they had been promised a future discount once the rooms reopened. The rooms had been marked out of order since the day the locations opened. None of them had ever been used by a paying customer. There were rooms inside the building that no one had ever entered, except staff after hours. Sarah Calloway, 38 years old, Plano, Texas, independent puzzle designer, 15 years in the industry. She had worked for two of the largest escape room franchises in North America before going independent in 2023. She designed mechanical puzzles, narrative scripting, prop fabrication oversight. She had a reputation for being thorough. On May 19, 2026, Sarah Calloway walked into the Frisco PuzzleVault location for a paid contract walkthrough. She had been engaged to refresh the Egyptian tomb room. The owner wanted new puzzles, a revised narrative arc, and updated lighting cues for a fall relaunch. She brought her tablet. She brought the blueprints the building owner had emailed her. She brought a tape measure. The blueprints showed the Egyptian tomb room as a rectangular space, 22 feet by 16 feet, with a single entry and a service alcove along the north wall. The actual room measured 22 feet by 12 feet. There were 4 feet of depth along the north wall that did not appear on the blueprint. She noticed it within the first 10 minutes. She did not say anything to the staff member who was escorting her. She continued the walkthrough. She made notes about the puzzle flow. She photographed the lighting rig. She measured the prop placements. At the end of the walkthrough, she asked casually about the service alcove. The staff member said it housed the HVAC return. Sarah Calloway is a puzzle designer who has worked on more than 200 escape rooms. She knows what an HVAC return looks like. The alcove was sealed with a painted wood panel and a decorative scarab motif. There was no grill. There was no register. There was no airflow. She thanked the staff member. She left. She drove home. That evening, she pulled the public permit filings for the Frisco location from the city portal. She compared the filed mechanical plan against what she had seen. She found a discrepancy in the ventilation riser layout. The filed plan showed a single riser servicing the front entry and the office. The building, based on her measurements, had a second riser running up the north wall behind the Egyptian tomb. It was not on any drawing. She pulled the electrical load filings. The location was permitted for an aggregate draw consistent with 6 operational escape rooms. The actual meter readings, which she obtained through a friend at the utility, showed a consistent overnight draw approximately 31% above the permitted load. The overnight draw should have been near baseline. It was not. One detail kept surfacing as investigators went through the warrant affidavit, 47 pages. Sarah Calloway did not just notice that something was wrong. She documented it the way a federal investigator would have documented it, before federal investigators were involved. She built the case against PuzzleVault on her kitchen table in Plano over the course of 16 days. On June 4, 2026, she filed an anonymous tip with the National Human Trafficking Hotline. She attached the blueprint comparison, the utility data, and a one-page memo. She signed nothing. She later told investigators that she had not been certain. She had been thorough. There is a difference. The tip was routed to HSI Dallas the following morning, June 5th. HSI Supervisory Special Agent Diane Reyes opened the file at 10:17 a.m. on June 5th. By noon, she had assigned 2 case agents and a financial analyst. By the end of business that day, passive surveillance had been authorized on all 3 PuzzleVault locations carrying out-of-order rooms. Passive surveillance means no entry, no contact, no covert recording inside the structure. Watch the doors. Watch the parking lots. Log the patterns. For the first 4 days of surveillance, the agent saw nothing useful. Customers entered during business hours. Staff closed up at 10 p.m. Cleaning crews arrived between 11 p.m. and midnight, stayed for approximately 90 minutes, and departed. The cleaning crew schedule looked normal. The surveillance had nothing. Then the overnight window opened, and everything changed. On the night of June 8th, an agent assigned to the Mesquite location extended his coverage by 3 hours. He had been pulled to cover a gap in the rotation. At 2:14 a.m., A white panel van with no commercial markings pulled up to the rear loading bay. Two individuals exited. They opened the rear of the van. They did not unload anything visible. They entered the building through a door using a key card. They were inside for 41 minutes. They departed. The same pattern appeared at Frisco the following night, and at Garland the night after that. A 3-day cycle. Different sites, different nights, same van, same window. The agents pulled the registration on the van. It was leased to a corporate entity called Vault Services Group, LLC. That entity had been incorporated 9 months earlier in Delaware. Its registered agent was a commercial filing service. Its declared business activity was janitorial and commercial cleaning. It had no employees on payroll, no workers' compensation filings, no tax remittances. It was a paper company. The phone number listed for Vault Services Group was a voice-over-IP line. The agents pulled the call records. The line had received exactly 17 incoming calls in the previous 90 days. All 17 came from prepaid mobile devices. All 17 prepaid devices had been activated within a 14-day window in October 2025. The same month, Marcus Dellard registered PuzzleVault Holdings. The case stopped being about an escape room business. The financial analyst pulled the PuzzleVault bank records. The vendor payments to Vault Services Group totaled $412,000 across 8 months. That figure was wildly inconsistent with a commercial cleaning contract for 9 retail locations. Industry benchmark would have been closer to $90,000 over the same period. The remaining $320,000 was, in the language of the affidavit, unaccounted for outflow, consistent with a layered laundering structure. On June 10th, HSI requested a K-9 pre-survey of all 3 locations. The legal threshold for a pre-survey is lower than for a full entry warrant. Dogs can sweep the exterior. They can be brought to publicly accessible interior areas with consent of the property holder or under specific narrow exceptions. The handler was Agent James Pryor. The dog was Rook, Belgian Malinois, 4 years old, cross-trained on narcotics and human scent. The sweeps were conducted between 11 p.m. and 4 a.m. on June 10th into the 11th. At Frisco, Rook alerted on the north wall of the Egyptian tomb room. At Garland, the dog assigned to that site alerted on the submarine room's portside bulkhead, which, per the blueprint, should have backed onto an exterior wall but in fact backed onto a void of approximately 6 feet of depth. At Mesquite, the 3rd K-9 alerted on the vault room's rear panel. Agent Pryor noted in his log that Rook had shown secondary interest in the base of the Egyptian tomb room door, approximately 4 minutes before the primary alert on the north wall. That secondary interest was logged, not elevated. The primary alert on the wall was the one that went into the affidavit. 3 locations, 3 dogs, 3 alerts, all on walls that, per blueprint, should not have backed onto anything occupable. K-9 alert alone is not legally sufficient for an entry warrant on a commercial property of this type. The case agents knew this. The K-9 alert had to be combined with documentary, structural, and pattern evidence to clear the probable cause threshold for a magistrate. So they built it. 47 pages. The Calloway documentation. The utility draw data. The Vault Services Group financial trail. The phone tree of 17 prepaid devices. The 3-day rotation pattern observed across all 3 sites. The K-9 alerts. 3 independent partition walls in 3 independent municipal jurisdictions, none of which appeared on any filed permit. There was one more piece. The financial analyst, working backward through Dellard's identification records, found that the Texas driver's license he had used to lease the PuzzleVault corporate space in Frisco contained a digit transposition in the back end, DMV record. That transposition matched a 14-month-old open investigation into a forgery network operating out of San Antonio. Dellard's name had never come up in that investigation. The transposition pattern had. The warrant was approved on June 11th at 4 p.m. Simultaneous entry was authorized for the early morning hours of June 13th. The K-9 dogs had alerted. The warrant was approved. But Dellard's phone had already gone dark. Sequential entry wasn't an option. The closed loop of 17 prepaid devices meant that seizing any one of them, breaching any one of the 3 sites, would trigger a notification cascade to the other 2 within minutes. The investigators built the operation around the assumption that they had one window, 4:47 a.m., on June 13th to take all 3 sites and all 11 targets at once. The plan held at the 3 sites. It did not hold for Dellard. The permit and inspection process failed at the municipal level. 3 commercial properties in the municipalities had unpermitted construction, partition walls, independent HVAC risers, electrical subpanels. Not a single code enforcement contact. The failure rests with the cities. The build-outs were inspected. The certificates of occupancy were issued. The fire marshal walkthroughs happened. No one measured a wall. 4:47 a.m., Friday, June 13th. The Frisco location. The breach team entered through the customer entrance. The lights inside the storefront were off. The lobby smelled of cleaning solution and stale popcorn. The staging area for birthday parties was set up for a booking that had been on the calendar for that afternoon. A handwritten sign behind the counter reads "Summer Schedule. Book your escape now." Agent Pryor and Rook entered second, behind the lead tactical operator. The Egyptian tomb room was the 3rd door on the left. The door was unlocked. Inside, the themed environment was intact. Painted hieroglyphics on the walls. A sarcophagus prop at the center of the room. A puzzle table with brass scarab tokens. Soft amber lighting on a low timer. Rook moved to the north wall and sat. The alert posture. Trained, repeatable, court admissible. The dog was looking at a section of wall painted to resemble carved limestone. The scarab motif Sarah Calloway had photographed 3 weeks earlier was directly in front of the dog's nose. Behind the panel was a pneumatic hinge assembly, custom machined, with a release mechanism keyed to a specific frequency emitted by a small handheld device. The agents recovered 3 of those devices from a desk drawer in the manager's office. The release frequency was identified in under 4 minutes by a Homeland Security technical specialist on scene. The panel opened inward. Behind it was a corridor approximately 4 feet wide. The corridor ran the length of the north wall, then turned 90 degrees and opened into a concealed room measuring approximately 18 feet by 8 feet. The ceiling was low. There was no exterior window. The space was ventilated by the second HVAC riser Sarah Calloway had identified on the utility data. The electrical subpanel powering the room was independent of the storefront's main service. Inside the room, the agents found 5 sleeping platforms, bunk style. 2 stacked on each side, one against the rear wall. The platforms had thin foam mattresses, fitted sheets, individual reading lights. There was a small chemical toilet behind a curtain, a microwave, a mini fridge, bottled water, snack food. They were from Arkansas, Oklahoma, Nebraska, Missouri, and Indiana. When the panel opened, 3 of the 5 were awake. 2 had moved to the far platform, was holding a library paperback open to the middle of a chapter, as though he had stopped reading mid-sentence when he heard the breach team move through the outer room. He did not put the book down. A female agent knelt in the doorway and spoke in a measured voice, identifying the team as federal law enforcement. She asked if anyone needed medical attention. One asked, in a voice barely above a whisper, if they could see their parents. The agent said yes. That answer is in the incident log. The debrief notes described the room going quiet for approximately 4 seconds after she said it. At Garland, the breach team entered through the rear loading bay. The submarine-themed escape room was at the back of the building. The concealed space was behind the portside bulkhead. The release mechanism was similar to the one at Frisco, a custom pneumatic hinge keyed to a handheld emitter. Inside the concealed space at Garland, the agents found Anna. At Mesquite, the vault room. The release mechanism on the rear panel was slightly different, a counterweighted swing assembly disguised as a decorative steel door. Inside, 4 more cheats. The rooms the agents found weren't the destination. They were the lobby. The commercial entertainment cover wasn't improvised camouflage. It was purpose-built, load-bearing architecture. The escape room business was real. The 4.8-star reviews were real. The birthday party bookings were real. The school district sponsorships were real. The concealed spaces were not a parasite attached to a legitimate business. They were the reason the legitimate business existed. 11 individuals were arrested across the 3 sites in the first hour of the operation. 2 coordinators, identified in the affidavit by initials only, were not at any of the 3 sites. They have not been located as of the time of this recording. Marcus Dellard was not at any of the 3 sites either. At 4:53 a.m., 6 minutes after the breach call went out at the 3 locations, Marcus Dellard boarded a Southwest Airlines flight from Dallas Love Field to Mexico City. He used a Texas driver's license in a different name. The transposition pattern matched the same forgery network HSI had been investigating for 14 months. The license was good enough to clear TSA. It was good enough to clear the gate agent. He had been tipped off. The investigation had identified the closed loop of 17 prepaid devices. It had missed an 18th. That 18th device had been activated 3 days after the others. It was not on the original pen register. It belonged to a low-level coordinator who had not been part of the original surveillance picture. That coordinator had received a routine 3 a.m. call confirming the night's transit, had heard about an unusual law enforcement vehicle staging 2 blocks from the Mesquite site, and had called Dellard at 3:41 a.m. Dellard was in his car within 9 minutes. He was at Love Field by 4:15. He was in the air before the breach teams moved. The HSI International Attaché in Mexico City was notified at 5:02 a.m. The Mexican federal authorities, the Fiscalía General de la República, were briefed by 7 a.m. local time. The flight had landed by then. Dellard had cleared customs on the false identity. He had taken a private car to the Polanco neighborhood. He had checked into a boutique hotel under the false name. Mexican federal agents located him by reverse tracing the credit card he had used to book the hotel, a card issued to the false identity but funded from a Texas account that had been flagged in the PuzzleVault financial trail. 72 hours after his arrival, at approximately 11:30 p.m., Mexico City time on June 16th, Dellard was detained in the hotel lobby. He did not resist. He had a packed bag at his feet. He is currently being held pending extradition. The code names recovered from the coordinator phones read like something from a script. Each of the 3 Texas sites was assigned a designation. Frisco was referred to as the lobby. Garland was referred to as transit. Mesquite was referred to as the bay. The lobby is the room you enter first. Transit is what carries you somewhere else. The bay is where the cargo is loaded. The 3 sites the agents entered on June 13th were not the trafficking operation. They were the front end of a larger movement network. The children were a maximum of 3 days each. They had been brought in from somewhere else. They had been scheduled to leave for somewhere else. The Texas locations were a temporary holding stage in a longer route. Extradition proceedings and cooperation agreements will reshape this story significantly in the months ahead. The 2 coordinators still at large are believed by federal investigators to have direct knowledge of the upstream sourcing and the downstream destination network. The case is, in the language of the press conference, ongoing and expanding. Medical evaluation, forensic interview by trained specialists, and trauma-informed placement. The Office for Victims of Crime has assigned individual case managers. The 9 PuzzleVault locations have been closed by court order. The leases have been terminated. The build-outs at 3 sites are being preserved as evidence. The build-outs at the 6 fully operational sites are being inventoried. School districts have voided their sponsorship agreements. The 4.8-star aggregated reviews remain visible online as of this recording. Marcus Dellard's extradition hearing is scheduled. The 11 co-defendants arrested at the sites are in federal custody on no bail orders. The financial unwind of the Vault Services Group structure is ongoing. The National Human Trafficking Hotline received 43 calls in the 72 hours following the HSI press conference. 12 of those calls referenced commercial entertainment venues in other metropolitan areas. Each is being assessed. Investigators have not confirmed any connection to the Dellard network. They have not ruled one out either. The escape rooms are closed. The demand that built them still exists. The map isn't finished.